The board of CBS Network is set to discuss sexual harassment allegations against CEO Leslie Moonves today. Moonves said in a statement Friday that he regretted immensely making some women uncomfortable with his advances and that he never used his position to hinder anyone's career. CBS said on Friday it would look into the claims and launch an investigation into the company's culture. Ronan Farrow is the reporter who broke this story and the Harvey Weinstein allegations. He joins us now from Los Angeles. Mr. Farrow, thank you for joining us. First off, explain to us about the allegations. Give us more details.
So this is a story based on interviews conducted over the course of 8 months and a lot of hard documentary evidence that includes allegations from 6 women ranging from unwanted touching to what several of the sources term sexual assault. But beyond that, we also talked to dozens of sources within CBS, this very large media empire, who said that different divisions of the company exhibited the same pattern of behavior, of harassment and of retaliation.
I want to come back to that corporate culture in just a moment, but Les Moonves has responded to these allegations. I want to show viewers what he had to say. He says, "I recognize that there were times, decades ago, I may have made some women uncomfortable by making advances." He goes on to say, "Those were mistakes, and I regret them immensely, but I always understood and respected and abided by the principle that no means no, and I have never misused my position to harm or hinder anyone's career." So in that statement, he admits he made women uncomfortable, but your reporting indicates much more than discomfort. What do you make of that statement?
Well, that statement is obviously in the article, and in any case where you're doing a careful investigative report like this, as you know very well, you work closely with the subject of the story and make sure their input is in there and reflected. And the reason that these allegations are in print is that they hold up incredibly well to scrutiny. And you know, I think the fact that Mr. Moonves has admitted to significant swaths of these fact patterns and expressed some contrition is both a sign of how ironclad these women's stories are and how robust the evidence is, and also perhaps of the changing times we live in, that there is more realization that at a certain point, one can't simply deny things in the face of evidence.
You mentioned there that you had very strong witnesses, women coming to you, but also on the other side, you get a lot of pressure back when you cover these types of stories. They have lawyers, they have publicists. What types of things did you face?
You know, I try to keep the focus on the women's stories in a case like this. They really grappled for a long time with whether to come forward, precisely because of fears of the system that you're talking about. There are, maybe more to say about some of the aggressive tactics used in the future. We do report in this article that the Washington Post, obviously one of the great newspapers in the United States, faced a lot of intimidation, that there were smears on the reporters working on portions of this story. They were reporting on allegations of harassment at CBS News, part of this company, which I air in this story. And one of the things I say is that there were these prior attempts by good journalists to break parts of this, and that there was a lot of pushback that they faced. Some of it, I think, very heavy-handed.
Now, as of this morning, Moonves is still on the job. Are you surprised by that?
You know, it's not for me to comment on what should or shouldn't happen to Leslie Moonves. I will say that the women in this story weren't, in my view, motivated by a desire for revenge or to take down Les Moonves. What they want is reform, and they want to make sure that this culture of impunity that they described and of retaliation doesn't hurt another woman, the next person to come along to be in a meeting with both this individual and potentially other powerful people across this company. Now, obviously, a lot of dollars are on the line here for this board and for the CBS Corporation. But what these women want is for systemic change, and I think they've done something important in exposing the need for that.
Now, let's talk about the culture in this company, because you were talking about it at the beginning of your interview there. You also mentioned in your article that it's not just Moonves, but there's also CBS News, there's 60 Minutes. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Across this company, and we're careful not to overgeneralize. This is, not every employee or every manager, but this is a number of significant allegations in different divisions. People described a climate of harassers and abusers who were elevated, even as the company was paying out settlements, some of which we reviewed. And that's particularly important in the news division of this company, which shapes the facts that Americans receive, and is home to some of the most significant news sources we have in television, such as 60 Minutes, a very important program in the States. And we heard from an investigative journalist there who later filed a formal government complaint about harassment, and who says that she was retaliated against for reporting it. Actually, a CBC reporter, Habiba Noshin, she talks about the need as an investigative journalist to speak truth to power, not just in your stories, but in your own newsroom at home.
Absolutely. Now, the women in the Moonves investigation started coming to you after you broke the Harvey Weinstein allegations, which really propelled a Me Too movement. What have you learned from your work on these stories, and are things starting to change?
Well, as I mentioned, I think that the tenor of Mr. Moonves' statement, where there is a degree of admission and of contrition, is a sign of the changing times. But the systemic allegations of harassment and retaliation run deep, I think, in a lot of corporate cultures. And what can be important in this story, if people seize on the opportunity, is a chance to say, hey, we're not just making idle statements of principle in the wake of this movement. We're actually willing to take a serious look at how we do business. And there's this board meeting today. What they're going to have to decide is it worth putting a lot of money on the line to stand up for those principles and the vulnerable workers who have said one after another, we're facing harassment here.
Ronan Farrow, thank you for bringing this very important story to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Hannah.
Ronan Farrow is a contributing writer for The New Yorker and is in Los Angeles.